So today we're going to cover 7.6. The first part of 7.6 is just doing GCF, or greatest common factor. And then everything else stays the same. So the first example we have here for problem 1 is going to be 2c squared minus 14c minus 36. As we go through here, for each time that we work these, the first question you always ask yourself is, can I take something out of the 3 numbers to make that trinomial smaller? So the first thing I look at is, okay, it's got a multiple of 2 in front of c squared. Now, I've had a few conversations with you guys off to the side because everybody's at little different levels. What you want to remember is, for those of you who are doing this, you always look to the one that has the quantity squared. If it is able to pull out the 2 out of all of them, then take the full 2 out of all of it. If it's not and you have to keep it there, well, then we do the other method we spoke of last class, okay? So for this particular one, we can take a 2 out of everybody. So I'm going to divide everything by 2, which gives me c squared minus 7c minus 18. So we know we can break this down here. Now, ignore the 2 for the moment, but don't forget about the 2. So let's put a box around it so we know to come back to him in the end. That way we know he's something important. So this is where the x factor comes back into that we talked about this past week, I should say. So if we look at this, I'm going to take and put the negative 7 up top and the negative 18 on bottom. We don't need to worry about the umbrella method that we talked about earlier because there is no number now in front of the c squared. All right, other little note of concern. Remember, the top number is the middle. The bottom number is always going to be the first times the last or just the last. So be very wary of that when you're going through this. Now, easy enough. Let's figure out our factors. So who wants to tell me what the 2 factors are that multiply and make negative 18, but then add together and make 7? Okay, 2 and 9. Now that we've got the 2 and the 9, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of signs go with them? We have a negative 7 in the middle, so who has to be negative so that it stays negative? The 9, correct. So I'm going to put a little plus sign in front of my 2 so I don't forget. We don't want to forget him. So this is it for this particular problem because we have no other number in front of the c squared. I can jump right into my 2 groupings. So we talked about this before. You have to square root the c squared. Well, when you square root a c squared, that's a fancy way of saying, hey, just break them in half, right? Because when we square root an exponent, we learned in chapter 6, it basically takes and divide the exponent by the root, which is 2. So in this case, we break them both into c. Behind it, we put our 2 factors. So one of them is going to have a negative 9, and one of them is going to have a positive 2. Now, question is, am I done? No, we're not done because we forgot who? The 2. So remember, we held him off to the side for a reason, so we need to make sure that in our final answer, we put the 2 in front of the 2 groupings. Okay, let's work out another problem, and then we will move into the little bit bigger problems. So I'm going to skip now to number 6 because I want something with multiples of another type of number. And these are q's, by the way. So it's 3q squared plus 30q plus 27. So in this particular problem, we're going to ask ourselves, all right, can I take something out of all 3 of them again? Yes. What can I take out of it? A 3. Good job. So we're going to divide a 3 out of all 3 of these. And we're going to put a box around them because remember, we don't want to lose it. So this becomes q squared plus 10q plus 9. So now that we've reduced it down by factoring out a common factor, we can now go to the x factor. So someone help me fill in the table. What do we have and where? Okay, we put our positive 10 at the top, correct? The positive 9 at the bottom, excellent. All right, so now that we got our top and bottom filled out, remember it goes, what can I multiply and make 9, but then add and make 10? Remember, the word add goes up here, and multiply goes down here. So what two numbers do you come up with? What two numbers multiply and make 9, but then add and make 10? 1 and 9. Okay, so a positive 1 and a positive 9. And like before, we have no number once we've taken out the greatest common factor in front of the Q. So we can jump right into our two groupings. So I have Q plus 1 and Q plus 9. Now, like before, you guys told me that I have to put the 3 out front. So we're going to bring our 3 out front because remember, we don't want to forget about him. All right, so that is it for that first part. Is there any questions on that? Okay, so I'm going to give you one problem to work before we go into the next section. So let's say we have, and by the way, this is number 5 in your note packet, 5s squared plus 55s plus 50. Let me push that up a little bit so it makes it easier for you to see on the overhead. So take a minute, you can pause this video. Okay, hopefully you've taken time and gone through this first without the video. So you should have taken a 5 out, which would have given you s squared plus 11s plus 10. Now we're ready for the x factor. So the middle we know is a positive 11, so we put that on top, and the bottom is a positive 10, so we put that there. Now, what two factors multiply and make 10? Well, as you notice, it's similar to the 9 and 10. So in this case, we're going to say it's 10 and 1 again. So it's very similar to the last problem in this way. So this time we can jump right into the groupings, but instead of Q, we're going to put an S. We know we need to move our 5 over there. And one will be positive 10, and one will be positive 1. And that is it with factoring with the x factor with pulling out greatest common factors.